It's one thing to build products for independent insurance agents. It's another thing altogether to build tech-enabled products for very specific niche industries like restaurants. So, how do you do it? Well, that's exactly what my guest, Bobby Touran, is going to talk about today. Let's get started. So, Bobby has 7 years in the insurance industry. He's a co-founder of two insurtech companies in the P&C space, both with a focus on retail agents and small commercial insurance. But I bet there's a whole lot more to Bobby Touran. So tell me who you are. What's going on, man?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jim. I uh, I think I'm a pretty normal guy. I've just always been really interested in building things. I just love the challenge of staring at a blank piece of paper and trying to figure out my way. I think part of the reason I like it is because since there's nothing on a blank sheet of paper, anything you're doing can kind of feel like progress. So it's like a nice self-fulfilling thing.
I love
But
that.
for basically my whole career, building things has involved building with software. So I've worked really closely with software engineering, and I've been able to do it in a number of different industries, and
Yeah,
most recently in insurance. And I absolutely love the insurance industry, and so yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about it today.
I love it. Have you ever heard of Remarkable, like the writing tablet?
Yes, I have.
I just got one a couple of days ago when you were talking about having a blank page.
Yeah.
I'm feeling you on that. I love the idea, whether it's a sheet of paper or my Remarkable tablet. And like, this is not an advertisement for Remarkable, but the first time I opened it, I was like, this is so cool.
I have
I can
actually a
literally
good friend
create
of mine has
anything.
it, and they love it. They use it all the time.
Yeah, I was just at a insurance conference and there was probably like five or six people around me all had them, and I was like, "Ah, okay, fine, I'll cave in and I'll get one."
Yeah,
But
yeah.
no, it's cool. So, all right, let's talk about tech-enabled products for insurance agents. Was there a pivotal moment for you, or some big kind of aha moment that you were like, it needs to be tech-enabled?
Yeah, so uh, just a bit more about my background. If you
Yeah.
go back about 7 years, I really got started in insurance in early July in 2017. And so this time in 2017, a few weeks before July 7th, if you told me that I was going to spend time thinking about the ins and outs of insurance, any part of insurance, life, health, P&C, I would have said you're crazy. I would have said, I don't know anything about insurance. I don't even know how my own health insurance works. Why would I spend time trying to think about insurance? And fortunately for me, though, I came across the PNC industry. I learned about, first of all, what those letters stand for, and how the industry operates. So like I said, blank sheet of paper, and I had no bias in terms of, I didn't grow up in a family of insurance practitioners like a lot of people in the industry, and
Yeah.
that's not great because I had like to learn everything basically, but it was kind of nice at the same point because I didn't have any preconceived notions about how things are done. And
Yeah.
I think I hear that a lot when I talk to folks. Oh, well, that's how things are done. This is the way it is. And one of the things that was really striking to me was there's actually a few things. One is just how massive the insurance industry is. Second of all, how important the product that insurance sells is, especially here in America. It's just critical for the economy.
Yeah.
And but then the third thing is like how good uh, a job people do, agents do selling insurance to those who need it, but doing it in a way that still involves a lot of emailing and phone calling and still filling out forms. And given my software experiences, I was just always wondering like, why isn't there more of an end-to-end digital experience? And I
Yeah.
think, as I dug into it, as I read white papers, as I talked to people at carriers, there was a lot of, oh, we've all tried that. It never really works. The software is always clunky. It's always expensive. It's always slow. There was just like a general cloudy sentiment, let's just say, overcast sentiment about sort of the use of software. And for most people, it really, the furthest it would go is I use an online portal to submit my business to carriers. And
Mm.
that was it. But then if there's any feedback, if there's anything I have to do, if there's any follow up, a lot of that's going to happen offline, outside of the system.
Hmm.
And so a lot of those folks were like, you know, I don't really feel like it's that digitally enabled. And I wish it was like easier for me to place a lot of this business. This is agents telling me this.
Yeah,
And so that's sort of what like piqued my interest and what caused me to keep going down the rabbit hole.
that's awesome. It was interesting you said cloudy because I forgot to mention that the name of your company is Rainbow. I guess the my first question would be, where the heck did that come from, and what does that have to do with insurance?
Well, so we really wanted to name that my co-founders and I really wanted to name the company something that was not like insure something or
Yeah,
something tech or
yeah,
some play on the words of insurance or tech. We wanted a name that sort of sounded pretty generic or pretty broad, but we also wanted something that was going to be sort of positive feeling because we think ultimately insurance is a really positive thing. It protects you. And we
yeah,
wanted it to be memorable.
yeah.
Um, and we started brainstorming names, and Rainbow was one that came up. And then as we were like, oh, but there's got to be, a ton of companies named Rainbow in insurance, and we found that there really weren't,
Yeah.
and there weren't really that many companies named Rainbow in financial services at all. Um, and so we just kind of went with it, and we found it to be just sort of a very sticky and memorable name, and so it sort of served us well.
Awesome. So, what do you guys focus on?
So Rainbow is an MGA or an MGU, managing general underwriter. We specialize in underwriting risk. At the end of the day, we have underwriters on our staff. We focus on delivering profitable underwriting results to reinsurance partners. And our approach is that we have this online platform, a quote bind issue platform that agents can use. We exclusively distribute through agents that agents can use to place commercial business. And then we've built also a bunch of tech around the underwriting side of the product. And a lot of that, like the software goes all the way into the product, into like the level of like the filing and the actual policy.
Hmm.
Um, the approach is that we have these specialized programs. And my prior company was actually in the E&S space. And one of the things that I really took away from that industry was how there would be these amazing companies, like you said, focused on these niches that these insurance companies that no one's ever heard of, and these
Yeah,
businesses would be like, from a business person perspective, like just like beautiful, like very
yeah,
profitable, very sticky type of business. And it would be like, I'm going to insure, I'm just looking around my room, printer manufacturers, or I'm going to insure beverage distributors, and they
yeah.
would have these insurance programs, and it all just seemed sort of like very mysterious and interesting to me. So we thought, okay, small commercial insurance still feels like a problem, very fragmented market. The biggest player in this space, I don't know if it's still the case, but at least a few years ago was State Farm, and they had like 7% market share. So
Yeah.
very, very fragmented. Even a company like State Farm has been around for 110 years. And so we were like, where is the innovation really happening? And what we thought was going to be compelling to agents and then ultimately was going to benefit insureds was, let's come up with very specific, very sort of deep programs. And as we looked at small commercial, we saw that restaurants was an attractive category. It's a large category. It's been fairly distressed and dislocated in terms of carrier appetite. And
Yeah.
so that kind of like felt like an opportunity for us as outsiders with a new program. And we got to work developing our first filing, and our first appetite, which is for restaurants, as I say, is quite broad. We can write all kinds of restaurants, and all of it initiates through our online platform. And then we have a human team of underwriters that are there to sort of handle edge cases or work with the agent where it's needed. And so that's how we got started. And today we insure restaurants across 21 different states, including Georgia. And we have a BOP product, that's like the core insurance product. And we
Hmm.
also offer excess liability for insurance.
That's awesome. You talk about restaurants being kind of like distressed. Talk about some of the challenges that you've been able to solve in terms of writing insurance for restaurants. Because I think I saw something somewhere that it was like 8 minutes to quote and bind or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. I think the first thing is that if you look at restaurants as a class of business, the penetration rate of insurance is close to 100%. Every
Mm.
restaurant's going to have some kind of insurance, and they should,
Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
run a risky business, right?
Yeah.
And most businesses don't necessarily have a ton of cash on hand, so managing their cash is critical. Um, and as we talked to reinsurers, one thing that we heard again and again about restaurants was a lot of people would say we don't rate restaurants. A lot of people would say to us we don't want to work with a startup program. But
Mm.
once you got past those folks and you got to the folks that were like, you know, we'd like to rate restaurants, but the truth is the thing we're most self-conscious of is we never really know if the restaurant as it's presented to us is really like the actual restaurant. We're like, well, what does that mean? And they were like, well, like we don't want to write places that stay open past a certain time of day, but we
Yeah.
don't know how to verify like the hours of operation in a very cost-effective way. Like we would need a human
Yeah.
post-bind to go in and like check their Google profiles and things
Yeah.
like that. We're like, okay, that's something that we can solve pre-bind. Or
Yeah.
another thing would be we don't necessarily want to insure places that have live entertainment or that
Mm.
have a doorman or that have drink specials that are heavily advertised or that sort of present themselves as a bar and grill when they're really just a bar that like sells pretzels. And they're like, how do we, we just don't know how we do that. And plus, for a lot of these small commercial policies, we don't really even audit them a lot of the time. So how do we do that? And so those components sort of gave us this very interesting problem to us. We're sort of nerdy about this stuff to think about. Okay, how do we sort of solve that? And what we realized was that restaurants have two things that are actually make them really attractive for our model. Number one is there's a ton of information about every restaurant online. There's reviews, there's
Yeah.
business profiles, and these restaurants benefit from having robust online profiles. I don't know about you, but anytime I'm about to go somewhere, I always Google it to find the
Yeah.
address. And then the first thing my eye goes to is like, what are the reviews? And like, what do
Yeah.
people like there? What don't they like? I'm going to look at the pictures. How does the guacamole look at this place? Do I want to eat that or not? Right?
Is it brown or green? Yeah.
Is it brown or green? Exactly. So that's a great example. What are the hours of operation? And what we realize is that all this stuff is online. How
Yeah.
do we use that to basically determine eligibility? And at the end of the day, underwriting, if you really boil it down, it's absolutely an art and a science, but it's about selecting risk and then pricing risk.
Mm.
And so we thought, okay, if we can use all this information, we can create some data pipeline so that when you submit Jim's Cafe in
Yeah.
Atlanta, we can
Yeah.
search all these different sources. We can get a much clearer picture of the risk and determine if it's eligible or not.
Yep.
And then as it comes into our platform, we're going to ask you all these other questions that help us determine what's really the right price for that business. So the first thing was the publicly available data. And the second thing was restaurants are increasingly becoming software enabled.
Yeah.
Basically, every restaurant has a very powerful point of sale system, which has very, very granular sales information down to the level of like what time of day was the last alcoholic beverage sold? How many
Wow.
people were sitting at that table? Was it
Yeah.
one diner who got 12 drinks or was it 12 drinks for 6 people, 8 people? These are all the types of things that from an underwriter's perspective are sort of valuable information. And then we can use that information to price that risk in a more attractive way.
Wow. So you're actually pulling from a ton of different data sources to be able to gather all the underwriting information, or not all, but a lot of the underwriting information you need to speed up the process a whole lot more. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's exactly right. And then the other thing that we do, everything I just described is all pre-bind.
Yeah.
The other thing that we do is we continuously, what we call continuous underwriting. So again, if you looked at most of these carriers, the reinsurers, they're going to underwrite the policy when it binds and when
Mhm.
it renews. And they're not really going to be spending time looking at that account unless there's a claim or something in between.
Yeah.
So what we do is on an ongoing basis for a risk that's on our book, again, we have these different data pipelines that keep checking a lot of these same sources to
Yeah.
see like if the nature of the risk is changing. Are a lot of people starting to get food poisoning at this place suddenly?
That would be
Uh,
an issue.
yeah, exactly. It would be an issue. Is it, did they say they were going to start closing at 9 and now suddenly they're staying open later because they realize that they can get a nice late night crowd? Is it
Yeah.
sleepy restaurant in the financial district that really shuts down after lunch, and now they're staying open late because they want to start doing happy hours 5 times a week. Those are really valuable insights for us to think about, not just when the risk comes up for renewal, but also it's information that we can equip our agents with so that they're aware of, like, hey, the nature of the risk that you underwrote is changing and you should be
Yeah.
aware.
And I would assume that if you get to renewal and you're seeing some of those changes and you guys have that data, that you would otherwise be able to make underwriting decisions before talking to the agent, or do you still involve the agent and say, oh, like you said, I mean, you're providing the information to the agent, but would
Yeah.
you also just wholesale say we're getting off this risk because of what we're seeing online and prove it otherwise?
Well, so I think the key is what you said, which is that we will always only interact with insureds through the agent.
Okay.
And when the risk is coming up for renewal, as that 90, 60, 45-day sort of countdown begins,
Yeah.
we're able to sort of feed the agent with information that they can look at when it comes time for them to review. Because agents are busy. They've got all kinds of things going on. We work with some agents that are specialists in hospitality and food and beverage, but the
Yeah.
vast majority of our agents are generalists. They
Yeah.
insure all kinds of commercial businesses in their local communities. They don't have the time or the bandwidth or the resources to be thinking about, hey, how has Jim's Cafe evolved since I wrote it 8 months ago? But
Yeah.
if we can present that information to them, and then again, this is where having human underwriters really makes a big difference for us, rather than it just being decline or accept algorithmic underwriting only. We
Yeah.
do have a portion of that too, but like I said, the human in the loop is really critical. The underwriter is there to sort of speak to the agent if we see something particularly concerning. I'll say that the vast majority of the risks that we write, if we do a good enough job at eligibility, we're not going to have pre-bind. We're not going to have these like big shock
Yeah,
surprises,
I was gonna say that.
right? So,
Yeah.
but again, it's, as you can appreciate, this is an industry where the claims that really kill you, or this is a vertical, are those severe ones. It's not so
Sure.
much business interruption because of something or something, or
Yeah.
it's those really bad cases. And if there are like indicators that can help us prevent just some number of those, we're going to be doing right by our agents, and we're going to be doing right by our reinsurance partners. And those are sort of the two groups that we sort of we what's the word, we answer to both of those groups, and so
Sure.
we want to
Yeah.
try to do right by them.
That makes sense. So, give me a sense for what the feedback from agents is about what Rainbow is able to provide them. You know, we have lots of different options, even on our own agency of where we could place restaurants. So, what kind of feedback are you guys getting from agents on their experience?
Yeah, so far the feedback has been extremely positive.
Yeah.
I think the things that agents like the most are a couple of things. Number one, they really love our human touch, right? Like they love the ease of doing business. Time is money if you're an agent. And so, like you said, if you can get a bindable quote within a few minutes and you don't have to talk to anyone because it's just a vanilla risk, amazing. Our product is admitted. And so, retail agents are in there every day. We work with about 5,000 agents across the country.
Hmm.
And we just launched into the market about a year ago. So we've grown quite nicely within the
Wow,
agent
that's pretty
community. And a
fast.
lot of that's happened through word of mouth.
Yeah.
Agents sort of telling other agents, which is amazing. Um, they love the human touch. They love that, we respond very quickly with a human, not a
Yep.
chatbot. They really like the quoting experience, the efficiency of doing that, like I was saying. And they really like the appetite. So I think what you said is right, that a lot of the carriers who are sponsoring Super Bowl ads, the big
Yeah.
name carriers, we don't have to name them, but the big name carriers, of course, they all have appetite for restaurants in their portfolio. But the thing is that, first of all, it depends on what state you're in. Different states have a very different appetite. Second of all, as the broader P&C industry has been challenged in the last year or two because of all these macro things that are happening, like climate change and inflation and all these different things, a lot of these carriers have had to either limit their appetite, entirely exit classes of business, um, and many of them have actually started to non-renew a lot of these policies. And again, back to what I was saying, since basically 100% of restaurants need insurance,
Yeah,
it creates this kind of nice right place, right time for us,
sure.
where, because of all those things I was saying, an agent can say, "Oh, Rainbow, that's great. I have restaurants, Rainbow restaurants. It's kind of easy
Yeah.
to remember." And
Makes sense
then,
to have an R word.
and then, and then we get a look, at their business, and then it's on us to sort of like win and retain them as agents. Like we have to show them that it's a good product and that we offer great service.
It's awesome. You know, with any insurtech company, I think agents are inevitably asking, or especially asking, CEO, do you view insurance as a commodity? And so I pose that question to you, and why, and if so, why, or if not, why not?
I don't. I think the truth is that very too very few two insurance policies are alike,
Yeah.
even if it is for a specific class of business. And I think actually the role that agents play is like the critical reason why it's not a commodity,
Mm.
because you need somebody who's experienced. When we were thinking about distribution, I think it's natural to think, especially for small commercial, and a lot of the bigs have done this too. They're thinking, okay, we're just going to go direct to consumer, and we're going to try to cut out agents.
Yeah.
And from day one, that's one of those things that even before we decided we wanted human underwriters on staff, even before we thought about, hey, we want to do verticalized distribution underwriting of products, we said very clearly we're only going to distribute through agents. And I think that's really powerful for a couple of reasons. One, agents are our eyes and ears in the field. At the end of the day, our software can do whatever it wants, but it's really the agent that's going to sort of be making that final decision with respect to the insured.
Yeah.
And that level of expertise that's required to sell an insurance policy is yeah, I think that makes it not a commodity. I think it's actually a highly specialized product.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. How, if agents want to learn more about Rainbow, and I want to get into the rapid fire round in a second, how are they able to get a direct appointment, or do they have to go? Are they going through a wholesaler? How does that work?
Yeah. So if you go to userainbow.com, www.userainbow.com, you will see a link in the top that allows you to request an appointment. We have
Yeah.
a pretty straightforward appointment process. We absolutely direct appoint agents.
Okay.
Uh, we do work with a few market access partners, whether they're aggregators of some flavor or another. We're also becoming very active in state associations. So we recently joined the Independent Agents of Georgia,
Which is
which
how
is
we
how
got
we got
connected.
connected. And we love that, and we think that that's part of being in a community, and
Yeah.
we think that that's important. So you just go to the website, you can click the link, and you can typically be appointed within 24 hours. And if you have business that's sitting on your desk and you want to see what it's like to quote and get a quote from us before you become appointed with us, you can do that as well. You just need an appointment in order to bind. We don't have
Okay.
placement minimums. We pay very competitive commissions. And so as an agent, you don't really have a ton to lose by trying Rainbow. Um, in our opinion, and it's just a resource that's available to you. It's easy to quote, and like you said, you can get appointed very smoothly and write restaurants with us.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just so you know, I reached out to our marketing manager, and she was getting set up, I think, yesterday. So yeah, super excited. And she said, and I told her I was interviewing you, and she was like, "Wow, this timing is incredible," because I literally just had one of our agents, ask me where she could place this particular restaurant. And she was like, "Actually, I think this may be a good fit." So good timing.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, this is great. Let's get into the rapid fire round. I want to learn a little bit more about you, what makes you tick. What's one piece of technology or software you can't live without?
So I definitely use Slack more than any other app.
Okay.
It's our internal chat tool.
Yeah.
We're not a team. We're one of the few insurance companies that is not a team Microsoft Teams
Oh
company.
no, us too, man. I can't stand
Okay,
it.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
but Slack is great, and I spend way too much time looking at Slack on my phone and on my computer.
It connects people at the speed of light.
It
That's for
does, yeah.
sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's one book that you're currently reading or one that you've read recently on any subject that you want to share with folks?
So a book that I recently reread is called Setting the Table, and it's by Danny Meyer, who
Okay.
is a restaurateur who started a number of high-end restaurants in New York, and then he is also the founder of Shake Shack.
Oh,
For those
okay.
who like burgers, yeah. So he had one location of Shake Shack in New York City, and it always had this line around the block. And then
Yeah.
he sort of made it this huge concept. And basically, he talks about in the book the role of hospitality. That when people hear hospitality, they think restaurants and hotels, but he basically talks about hospitality as like a mindset for customer
Hmm.
service and customer
Yeah.
success. And we actually give that book to our employees. And we talked about it at a recent offsite that we had to basically emphasize the importance of that human connection with our agents as sort of a good way to run the business. So I'd read it years ago, and then not knowing again that I'd be insuring restaurants ever. I've always loved restaurants, like as a patron.
Yeah.
Uh, and then once we got into the business, I sort of came across it on my bookshelf, and I was like, oh, I should read this again. And I was able to read it sort of in I like read it in such a different way now that I think about the business. So I would recommend it to anyone.
That's awesome. I love that concept too of rereading books. There are some that I've reread in the past that are just like it's too good. But yeah, to your point, having growing as a person and having different things affect your life and seeing it through a new lens is always kind of exciting because kind of back to what you said at the very beginning of about having a blank piece of paper. It's
Yeah,
like you're able to see things in a whole different light and apply it to your life. So that's
yeah,
cool. I like
absolutely.
that. What's one piece of advice? Is one of my favorite questions. What's one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Be patient.
Ooh, okay. Do
Yeah,
tell.
I'm just not the most patient person. I've always been this way. Ever since I was a little kid, I've heard my mom and dad telling me to just sort of slow down and be a little bit more patient. And now that I have a young child as well, which is like the best thing in life
Yes,
for me, um, I just find myself I like hear their words in my ears all the time, and yeah, it definitely applies to work too. I think if you want to be successful in the insurance industry, even when you're in the technology side of it, especially you definitely need to be patient. Good things come to those who wait.
I love it. How old's your child?
He's almost two. He's
Oh
my first.
man,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's
yeah. That also requires a lot of patience
a
to
lot
your
of patience.
olds.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. At the end of a long day, when you're dealing with like yogurt all over his hair, you're like, all right, I need to take a deep breath here and see the bigger picture.
That's awesome. Well, and I don't normally give unsolicited advice, but since we're talking about kids and you said be patient, the one piece of advice that stuck with me from my father, I've got three kids. My oldest is turning 19 tomorrow, and I've got
Congrats.
16 and 12. But it's two words, and it starts with be. Be there. If that's the only piece of advice I would give any parent at any age, no matter how old your kids are, just be there,
I
because
love that.
that's you will look back and it will fly by. So
Yep,
yeah,
that's great.
just totally unsolicited. I know you didn't want
No,
it,
I
but
love it.
getting it.
And I need to hear that honestly, because like I said, I shouldn't be checking Slack. I should be paying attention to my kid.
No, no, no. You have to find the harmony, right?
The
It's
harmony, right?
almost impossible to have balance. Great insurance agent named Grant Botma, who wrote a fantastic book called Work Life Harmony, and yeah, it's all about finding that harmony. So
Nice. I like
that's
that.
cool. So, what's one final piece of advice based on what we talked about today that you would leave our viewers and our listeners with?
I would say to agents that agents in particular that you know it's sort of this tricky thing, and I don't mean to give a long answer here, but like insurance is incredible because it kind of doesn't change, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah,
there are so many parts about it that are dependable. All of the core pieces have basically not changed in hundreds of years. Like they've evolved a little bit, but they haven't really changed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think what happened in the last sort of 7, 8 years, as a lot of technology companies were like, ooh, insurance, that's interesting. I'm going to go try to
Yeah.
do software there. Some of them have sort of tainted the well
Mm.
and left this really bad impression just because they made a lot of silly mistakes. And it's sometimes hard for agents to sort of have an open mind and appreciate that it's okay for people to keep trying to evolve things and understand that it's coming from a good place. Like, yes, we want to make money. Yes, we want to sell profitable insurance, but we can only do that if you, as an agent, find it easy to work with us. You want to keep doing business with us. So just understand that, like, we're very aligned,
Yeah.
and we hope that you can be open minded to new ways of doing things because we have to constantly, and it's the same advice I would kind of give myself, we have to constantly be open minded to, hey, you may think these things based on evidence that you've seen, but you might just be wrong, right? Like
Yeah.
you gotta, and that's very humbling. But I think it's just critical because insurance is so important. It's such a good product, and it's just going to keep getting better and better. I really believe that.
It's God's greatest industry ever given to man, just in case you didn't know that.
Now, I've heard that before, and now I know it for sure.
Well, Bobby, if people want to get more Bobby Touran in their lives, where do they go?
You can email me, Bobby at userainbow.com. I really try to respond to every email I get. I guess that's another way of saying I don't get that much fan mail. Uh, but feel free to reach out to me anytime. Add me on LinkedIn. You can find me there too. And if those two don't work, just reach out some way through the website and the message will find its way to me.
Awesome. My friend, thank you for being on Agents Growth Academy today. It was a pleasure having you.
I really appreciate it, Jim. Thanks very much. This was fun.
Absolutely. Everybody out there, grow big or go home. See ya.